What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about who I think should go from picks 1 all the way through 10 in the 2023 NBA draft. Of course, the lottery is all done now. We know who got stuffed over and who did really well. Of course, Detroit, unfortunately, being one of the teams who fell down to pick 5, and Portland being one of the teams who did quite well and went all the way up to the 3rd overall pick. Again, a lot definitely happening in this draft, and I'm really excited to show you guys who I think should go from pick 1 through 10. So before we get into it, I do highly recommend you guys subscribing for all the latest NBA content and news, whether that is draft videos, of course, potentially off-season videos, trades and whatnot. All of the above I will be talking about on this channel. So if you haven't already, please subscribe for all the latest content. I guess without further ado, here's who I think should go from picks 1 through 10 in the 2023 NBA draft. But in today's draft, we now have the first overall pick, which will be going to the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't think there's going to be any way the Spurs even look to trade away this pick. I think it's pretty obvious, and I think they already know who they're, of course, going to be selecting with this pick. And I think I agree with the Spurs. And with the first overall pick, I will have San Antonio selecting Victor Wembanyama with the first overall pick. Again, this guy is one of the biggest freaks we have ever seen going into a draft. You know, of course, some names that we have seen that are just absolutely like God-gifted natural talents, like LeBron James, Zion Williamson, of course, in his draft year, and now Victor Wembanyama is definitely on that list. A guy who I'm very glad is going to San Antonio, because if anyone is going to be able to develop him, it is 100% them. Victor Wembanyama, of course, is a 7'3", 7'4", depending what website you look at, power forward / center. Like, the fact that I can say this dude can play power forward is almost like one of the most outrageous things, especially considering he's like 7'4". It's just insane that he can literally switch onto the power forward and do his thing there. He is an absolute beast offensively, even having a jump shot that some people are literally comparing to Steph Curry, which might sound crazy to think, but then when you watch this guy play, he's got probably the smoothest jump shot I've ever seen for a dude above the height of 7 foot, and he just makes a lot of threes, especially for a guy that high. It's like something just extraordinary and something that you kind of never really have seen before. The only guy I think I can really fully name off the top of my head who's above like 7'1" that can hit threes decently well is, of course, like Kristaps Porzingis on an extremely consistent basis, who's done it, you know, almost every year of his career. And you look at Kristaps Porzingis and comparing to Victor, and Victor Wembanyama can just do that on a much greater scale. He's got an insane mid-range and an insane touch above the ring. He's just insane offensively. There's really nothing he can't do. He can dribble the ball, play make, got a really good court vision. And then when we, of course, take in all that to account, you also look at his defensive play, and this guy is an absolute freak defensively as well. Again, he probably will need to put on a bit more weight, because he is going to get probably destroyed against a player like Joel Embiid in the NBA. But honestly, I think that is the least of your concerns right now, is his weight. The guy can just defend, really can even switch onto the 3 as well. I've seen him do it, and he doesn't exactly go that bad doing it. Can definitely play power forward. It's just him playing on centers, his shot blocking ability, the interior defense, and even going up to the perimeter is a really good part of his game as well. Just an insanely good player, and one of the best players I think we've ever seen going into this draft. He definitely has a lot of really good things, of course, going for him. Again, counting all that, you know, it's obviously really good. There's not exactly a flaw of his game. The only issue with Victor would maybe be his weight, as I said, but you can definitely look past that. And the other thing is injuries. We know this guy has had somewhat of an injury run, and can definitely struggle to stay on the court sometimes. But it's just like you just have to look past that because of how insanely God-gifted natural talent this guy has. And especially at 7'4", being able to play like a point guard is just outrageously good. Again, a lot to work on in terms of putting some muscle on and some weight, but yeah, he is going to be an absolute star, I believe, and putting him onto the San Antonio Spurs is a really, really awesome idea. And if there's any team who can develop him, I think it's, of course, going to be San Antonio. So I'm very happy with this selection. I think it makes a ton of sense. Now, with the second overall pick, we have the Charlotte Hornets, who could have definitely used Victor Wembanyama themselves, but when we look at it, the fact that they were able to get up to pick number 2 is a really, really good thing for them, just because now they can finally put a player alongside LaMelo Ball, where LaMelo doesn't have to consistently take out his do-it-yourself type of kit every single game. And of course, with this pick, I will have them taking Scoot Henderson. I know that Scoot Henderson is another point guard, and that is pretty much the position that LaMelo Ball plays, but you just can't look past this guy. If Victor Wembanyama was not in this draft, Scoot Henderson would be a consensus number 1 overall pick, I believe. Not just that, in previous drafts, this guy probably could have gone number 1 as well. He is an elite level point guard who has absolutely insane off the charts athleticism, being compared to a younger Derrick Rose. And I know this player is in a bit of all sorts of trouble with his NBA career at the moment, but he's also being compared to Ja Morant. A bit of a hybrid of Ja Morant and Derrick Rose, just consistently extremely athletic, can score at really any will. His playmaking looks really, really nice as well. And in his first season against professionals in the NBA G League, I believe he did actually average around 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, which is pretty decent stats, especially in a pro league. I always do like to see these players go onto the pros and, again, try out their game before they do, of course, get drafted. We know LaMelo Ball did it with the Australian NBL team, the Illawarra Hawks, and seeing these two potentially partner together, I think will be a really, really awesome combo guard type of thing. Again, you're looking at a dude in LaMelo Ball who is about 6'7", can definitely slot over to potentially guarding that shooting guard position if you need. LaMelo, I think he can play off ball. He's not really ever done it so far in his career, but he has played with Terry Rozier, a really dominant ball scorer, so it's not like he wouldn't be used to doing something like that right now. Anyway, Scoot Henderson, of course, comes in. A really nice defender as well. I think that's what people don't see is, look, 15, 5, and 5 are pretty good stats. It's definitely a top 5 pick player type of stats in the NBA, but what makes him the number 2 overall is his defense is really, really underrated with his athletic frame, just being able to do all that type of stuff on the defensive end of the court. Again, with all that into account as well, you just see the ability for this guy to be able to score as an athletic beast. Very similar stats, I believe, to what Ja Morant and Derrick Rose produced in college as well. So I definitely would really like to see this, duo happen. And honestly, things could maybe be looking up for the Charlotte Hornets very soon. I'm not sure what's happening with Miles Bridges. I don't know if that's ever going to get settled, but I did hear a rumor that the Hornets are looking, very close at Miles Bridges. And once they trade away, I think, Terry Rozier, which will probably happen once they draft Scoot Henderson and whatnot, I could definitely see Miles Bridges coming back to this Hornets team. And what an offseason it would be to add a guy who probably should be an all-star in the NBA right now in Miles Bridges. And you're also adding another guy who I think could be a future all-star in Scoot Henderson. What an offseason be for the Charlotte Hornets. And I just think this makes a whole lot of sense to probably go in and look to do a move like this, I believe. So yeah, with the second overall pick, I think it's a pretty obvious decision by the Charlotte Hornets to take Scoot Henderson. Might not be the greatest fit with LaMelo Ball, but I definitely still think there is a huge possibility that these two are going to be absolutely fantastic together. And yeah, just those two at your guards is one of the best combo guards probably going to be in the NBA. So I could definitely see this, of course, succeeding. And oh my god, if you get Miles Bridges to the team, imagine how entertaining that big three would be. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Scoot Henderson. Like, wow. I think people forget that when Miles Bridges was on the team, the Charlotte Hornets team wasn't even that bad. Like, they were, I believe, a 10th or 9th seed at one stage. You bring Miles Bridges back, you probably add some more pieces in free agency, bring in Scoot Henderson. Whew, you're looking at a really, really solid outfit on the Charlotte Hornets next year, and hopefully for them, a healthy LaMelo Ball and potentially, hopefully, a healthy Gordon Hayward too, especially if he will most likely be on the roster again next season. So again, with the second overall pick, I do have the Charlotte Hornets, of course, selecting Scoot Henderson. Now, with the third overall pick, we do have the Portland Trailblazers, and I am so happy that Portland got this pick. I'll talk more about that in a second, but with the third overall pick, I do have the Trailblazers, of course, selecting Brandon Miller to this team. He will be absolutely perfect. I have heard rumors that the Trailblazers are going to trade this pick, which I'll get to in a second. I'm not really liking those rumors at all, but Brandon Miller, my god, does he really add to this team and what they are trying to do. And I think he is an extremely underrated player in this draft. Probably, I want to say, almost one of my favorite players going into this draft. I am one of those guys who believes that when it's all said and done, Brandon Miller could almost go as being nearly the best player in this draft. Again, with Victor Wembanyama, we have no idea how he's going to go in the NBA, especially with the injury pass. Again, touch wood. I hope he succeeds. I think he'll be awesome, and I think he's by far the best player in the NBA. It's why I had him going in at 1. Scoot Henderson at 2, I think, will be awesome as well. But there's something about Brandon Miller that's just telling me that this guy is going to be a very rock-solid dude. Being compared to Paul George as well because of his two-way ability. This guy can just score at will. He's got a good mid-range, a good 3-ball. He's got an extremely just good offensive part of his game. And I think what really comes into it as well is his defense. This dude is a rock-solid defender coming into this NBA draft. Again, I look at him and I'm just thinking, look, you're looking at a guy who's 6'9". Not only is he compared to Paul George, but he's actually taller than Paul George. And I've even heard some people say he might be more athletic. But just his ability to switch from 1 through 4, very similar to what Paul George has done for the predominant part of his career, is just an absolutely insane, natural God-gifted talent. And I think he on the Portland Trailblazers is exactly what they need. They desperately need a small forward, I believe. They desperately need some defense to come into this team as well. And I think with a couple of things they can do to retool in free agency, this team could very well be back in the playoffs, I think, next year. And that's not even a big, really call to make. I think, look, I was never big on the Yusuf Nurkic signing. Back when they did it, I thought they needed a different type of center, and I think if they were to bring in an interior defender who can help out with the pick and roll, whether it's a backup or whatnot, could still be a really awesome decision. But yeah, Brandon Miller, he just adds so much to this, I think, Portland Trailblazers team that they don't necessarily have. Again, you've got your scorers in Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. Jeremy Grant just wasn't the scorer that they need him to be, and I think moving forward, I do expect Grant to re-sign. I mean, if Grant leaves in free agency, that is a bit of a disaster, in my opinion. You definitely don't want to see that, but Jeremy Grant was supposed to come in and help Damian Lillard. He even said that he thought himself as to be a number 1, number 2 scorer on a good team. Again, that's what he wanted to do on Detroit, and why he actually almost wanted to stay there, to be honest, just so he can try and be that number 1, number 2 guy. But he was given the opportunity to be the number 2 guy at Portland and didn't really live up to it. He just kind of, didn't really do that. And then Josh Hart at small forward was pretty good, but again, I just felt like when Simons would go cold and Grant wasn't stepping up as a scorer, they needed a another guy to come in and help out. And you're looking at Brandon Miller here, can definitely do that. Not just that, the perimeter defense on their forwards now is going to be absolutely insane. Like seeing Jeremy Grant and Brandon Miller switch as your small forward and power forward, and both players having the ability to pretty much guard 1 through 4 is going to be a really awesome thing. And I think if Brandon Miller keeps developing that 3-point jump shot and gets it up to the ability of what like a Keegan Murray was in the draft before him, or even Paul George in the NBA would be a really awesome ability if he can get to even shooting as good as threes as PG. You're looking at Damian Lillard playmaking to 2 really, really good 3-point shooting forwards who can both defend the perimeter as well. Again, if Simons takes another step, which I believe he hopefully will next season, that Portland team will look really, really awesome on paper. Again, they've got to figure out what they want to do with their center position. It's not working. Nurkic I just don't know how great he is for this team. He's on too much money as well. It's not that great. I think you would rather a different player. But hey, if you can't get rid of him, I still think you need to go for a really good backup center in this draft anyway. But yeah, the fact that Portland want to trade this pick is so beyond weird to me. The only reason I think Portland should trade this pick is if they can go out and get like a pick, 6 and 11 in return from like an Orlando Magic, who I believe have like somewhat those exact picks nearly. Something like that would be a really good idea. Again, then you can draft the Jarris Walker to go play power forward on this team, move Grant to the small forward, and then maybe bring in another really solid young player. But that just doesn't help Damian Lillard as much as what it would be to go out and draft Brandon Miller. So, it would be a silly idea, in my opinion, to trade this. Look, they could trade for a star with it, but yeah, I just think it's a risky and a bit of a weird decision. I would take Brandon Miller with the 3rd overall pick. I think that just so happens to be a guy who fits your team at this pick. And look, if the Charlotte Hornets for some reason decide to take Brandon Miller instead of Scoot Henderson, which I don't expect them to do, but if they do, then yeah, maybe you hit the panic button a little bit, because Scoot Henderson, not a good fit for this team at all. But Brandon Miller, my God, yeah, he would be a really, really good player to see on this Portland Trailblazers team, in my opinion. Now with pick 4, the Houston Rockets did get this pick. Again, they fell somewhat in this draft, but I definitely don't think this is a bad decision or a bad luck really for this Raptors team. I really do think that, for this Rockets team, sorry, I don't think that they really got exactly too stuffed over by this, but that's why kind of, in my opinion, I do think they should be taking Amen Thompson with this 4th overall pick. I know some Rockets fans are, very not excited that they couldn't get Scoot Henderson, but I think Amen Thompson honestly fits this team as good as what Scoot Henderson was going to be. He is a guy who is 6'7", who can play point guard, can play shooting guard, and even switch onto the 3. A guy who is absolutely insane defensively and, kind of insanely athletic as well. He really does fit this team, I think, quite a bit. And you can honestly now move on from Kevin Porter Jr., which I expect the Rockets to maybe, of course, try and do. KPJ and Jalen Green, they don't work well together. You got 2 guards who just shoot the ball as soon as they get it. There's not really any playmaking between them at all. They're both very similar. It's just that Jalen Green does it at so much of a better level, and Kevin Porter Jr. is an extremely turnover the ball type of prone player who you just don't want to see be your starting point guard. And it's, I think, one of the reasons he is the Rockets have definitely I think failed almost because of this, and suffered is probably the better word. They've suffered by having those 2 players at their guards. And look, you can bring Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench. That's not a bad idea. You don't have to trade him necessarily, but bringing him off the bench, yeah, it's much better idea than potentially starting him. I genuinely believe, though, that Amen Thompson fits this team really, really perfectly, because he's honestly just a much cool, calmer, collected guard than what Kevin Porter Jr. is. Again, his playmaking is not necessarily, A1 just yet, but to be honest, he's going to come into this team and his playmaking will probably almost already be better than what Kevin Porter Jr.'s already is in his first season. He's definitely not going to turn over the ball as much as what KPJ will. At least that's what I genuinely believe. And of course, I think he will be just much more calmer. And I think the offense will be much more steady than what it is right now. Because right now, it's just all over the place. And it's definitely not great. So I believe as well, at the time of making this video, Amen Thompson is of course averaging around 4 or so assists per game, which again, he can definitely improve on in the NBA. But if we're going to see how he goes on this Rockets team, he definitely does bring in a lot of things that they of course need. And one of those big things is defense. This Houston Rockets team is, I'm pretty sure, by far and wide the worst defensive team in the NBA. It is absolutely shocking. And switching Kevin Porter Jr. to be your backup point guard or trading him away and replacing him with Amen Thompson automatically doubles the defense that was being put out on the floor. He's an extremely good perimeter guy who can really switch from 1 through 3 as well. Can almost do it all. Again, his offense is also really good. 3-point percentage, I think, could definitely use some work going into the NBA, but when we're looking at it right now, I think what makes him such a really good player is, yes, he's got decent scoring, but when I look at this guy, I'm like, this is one of the best defenders in this draft. He and his brother are exceptionally elite defenders going into this draft. They're extremely athletic, already have a ton of highly great athletic plays and dunk packages that is automatically going to translate to the NBA. Not just that, he looks calm and collected when possessing the ball, and look, his playmaking will definitely need some work, but there are players like Darius Garland who I believe averaged 4 or less assists per game before they got drafted, and we know DG is one of the best playmakers in the NBA right now, having 2 seasons averaging around 8 assists per game. So there's no reason Amen Thompson couldn't come in and do this for this Houston Rockets team. Not just that, he brings in the much needed defense that this team doesn't have. And plus, he and Jalen Green are both 6'5" or taller as your guards. So it's going to be a pretty interesting dynamic. Also extremely athletic. And if Amen Thompson's scoring converts to the NBA, which it might not straight away, but eventually will hopefully do, yeah, this guy's going to be a really, really good player. And I think this is an extremely good pick for the Houston Rockets. And I almost think I'm not saying he's better than Scoot Henderson, but I think he kind of brings in more than what the Houston Rockets need than what Scoot Henderson does. Again, I think that the Rockets are in so desperate need for this defense that Amen Thompson kind of does exactly that. So I'm really excited for the Houston Rockets, and I hope they do select his play, and I think it could be a really awesome fit for this team. Now, moving on to the 5th overall pick, we got the Detroit Pistons, who unfortunately for them, yeah, they fell, alright. They really badly fell. It sucks for them how they went from projected 1 to number 5. Yeah, it's not great, but luckily for them, there is a player available who I think can definitely help out their team quite a bit. A player who I think could legitimately be one of the best players going into this draft and most nearly NBA ready is Jarris Walker. And that's why I've got the Pistons selecting him at 5. I think he's a really awesome player, and if you'd like to know more about Jarris Walker, essentially he's a 6'7" power forward type of guy, really, really big frame, who is extremely good athletically. Honestly, if you watch this guy dunk, you're just like, holy crap, this dude is just absolutely insane. And I think there are a couple players you can, of course, compare him to in the NBA over time. Again, I originally thought he was 6'7", but some websites even have him at 6'8" now. So I wonder if he got, I think, if he even grew, or what that situation is. You're looking at a 6'7", 6'8" type of guy who is a power forward who can definitely switch to small forward who's actually been compared to a more versatile John Collins and Paul Millsap, and those are two really awesome comparisons. I know John Collins has definitely fallen in the NBA right now, which is really sad to see. I think he just needs a different scenario. But people forget that Collins was a 20-point per game type of guy on I think, conference finals team at one stage, is how good the Hawks ended up getting. And then you look at Paul Millsap, he's a former All-Star. So, again, Jarris Walker is an extremely big, strong dude who is athletic, who's a really good rim protector, naturally pretty decent on the defense. It's being said that he has a nice compact jump shot, which also shows a lot of promise. But again, his strength right now isn't exactly the 3-point line. He definitely needs to develop that, and he will. But his mid-range game is definitely really, really good. And you're looking at a really big dude who can almost muscle anyone in that painted area. An extremely good defender who also has a really good mid-range shot. And I just love this for the Detroit Pistons, because Detroit have been known for so long to be an extremely good defensive franchise who are really tough as nails and kind of have that grit and grind type of play about them. And that's why I loved when they selected Jaden Ivey, because I was looking at Cade Cunningham and Ivey and I was thinking, if these dudes can stay healthy together, you're looking at Cade Cunningham, who's like 6'8", Jaden Ivey's like 6'4", both extremely good defenders. Two are probably the best perimeter defensive guards in the league, kind of going at it together. Again, you look at those two and I'm just thinking, wow, they're already insane defensively. You keep building these defensive pieces and we could be almost seeing that Detroit Pistons team of old. And I think, look, you bring in Jarris Walker to this team, it doesn't help their 3-point percentage, which is one of the worst in the NBA, but you're looking at a guy who fits into the defensive game style that the Pistons have been known to be playing for quite a while. And yeah, I think it's a really awesome idea. Plus, Jalen Duren, he's only going to get better. I see a lot of promise for this guy in the league, especially as a defender. I think he could be one of the NBA's best one day. And there was a reason Jalen Duren was compared to Dwight Howard at one stage. Again, his first season, he averaged 9 and 9 on 25 minutes. I don't know if James Wiseman's that guy. I've never been that big of a fan of him. But I think if the Pistons want, I think they will. I think they'll play Duren a lot more next season. That starting 5 actually looks a lot better. You're looking at, hopefully Cade's healthy. Cade at the 1, Ivy at the 2, Bojan Bogdanovic at the 3, Jarris Walker at the 4, and Duren at the 5. That team might not win a lot of games just yet, because it will still need to develop quite heavily. But wow, will that be a strong defensive team who are going to be tough as nails every single night. And yeah, it'd be awesome. Again, they're still going to need to keep developing most likely, but I think they might keep Bojan Bogdanovic around, especially if they take Jarris Walker, because God, does that starting 5 just needs the slither of 3-point percentage, because yeah, not many people in that starting 5 can really shoot. So I'm not exactly too sure what they're going to do. I do think Jarris Walker is the way to go, and I think he would be a really awesome fit for this team. With the 6th overall pick, we actually have the Orlando Magic, and Orlando, again, seem like they just are continuing to hit the draft, and so far they've done a really, really good job with a bunch of their players that they've selected. Of course, taking the gamble and taking Paolo Banchero at 1 when a lot of people said they should take Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith. At pick 1, they really stuck to their guns, trusted their workouts, trusted their intel, and went with Banchero. And look how much it's rewarding them. And of course, Franz Wagner with a high pick. I think it was pick 8 or so the year before. Really good pick again. Suggs hasn't exactly panned out what they wanted him to be, but again, there's still a lot of time for him to, I still think, develop into being a really solid player in the NBA. And I think with the 6th overall pick, they have another chance to really add to this exceptional young core that they have. And with the 6th overall pick, I've actually got them selecting Asar Thompson, who I think just absolutely fits this team and continues to make this team one of the most exciting squads, I think, in the NBA. When we look at Asar Thompson, he's actually a lot, I think, more different to his twin that a lot of people think, you know, and actually know about. Again, with Asar, he's actually a little bit different in the points where he's not really a point guard slash guard like his brother is. He can definitely play the small forward quite well and even switch, I believe, from 1 through 3 and even potentially the 4 as well. An exceptionally good defender at 6'7", just has the ability to read the passing lanes really well. He's got really good weak side help on the defense. He's just an exceptional defender coming into this draft. Not just that, he is an extremely athletic guy as well, who I think is just so underrated when it comes to that. This dude's got crazy hops, and the potential with his athleticism also ties in the potential with his defense, I think, in the NBA, where it's just going to go coincide of just being a really, really good player. Now, I've seen some comparisons saying that he's actually, you know, got a couple of players here and there, like, of course, his brother. He's compared to his brother in terms of his athleticism and defense. But, of course, you know, as well as some other dudes here and there, like a Terrence Ross. And I think people forget when prime Terrence Ross was in the NBA, he was an exceptionally good scorer who had extremely good hops. And, of course, wasn't that bad on defense either. And I think when we look at Asar Thompson, if you can get the scoring and athleticism out of, you know, what prime I think Terrence Ross showed in the NBA, plus an elite level defense, you're going to be seeing an absolutely exceptional player, I think, coming to the NBA. And if you put him on this Orlando Magic team, God, is this team probably the most athletic squad in the NBA almost. Again, I don't know if, of course, the Stars are not going to fix their shooting issues. That's one big thing, is I don't think Orlando have really the greatest shooters, but I definitely think they can fill that out maybe on the bench. And who knows who their starting point guard is going to be in the future. Again, a lot of people say Markelle Fultz, but I wonder if you drafted Asar Thompson, do you look at maybe someone different at that point guard? If maybe Jalen Suggs gets the nod. And again, if you put Suggs in there as well, just defensively, this team from 1 through 4 is going to be stacked. Again, you might need to do some work on your center defensively, but honestly, just having Asar Thompson, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero all in the same lineup, I just think is one scary thing. Not only athletically, but defensively on the court. I think Banchero has a really high ceiling defensively. I think Franz Wagner is an underrated defender and can definitely grow into being a really good defender in the NBA as well. You look at Asar Thompson, one of the best defenders in this draft class. Some people have him as the best defender, which is not so far-fetched to think as well. And yeah, the scoring is going to be really good, and I just really love this young team that this Magic team would be building if they drafted Asar. Again, some issues with Asar Thompson is his outside shooting isn't very good. It's definitely a fault of his game style right now. He's also not a very good passer compared to his brother, or not as good as a passer, I should probably say. But look, if you bring in Asar Thompson, and even though himself and Banchero aren't the greatest three-point shooters, I think eventually, as they develop on their career, they could definitely get there. Again, Franz Wagner is a really good, or can be a really good three-point shooter. I think at point guard and center, we're not exactly too sure who's going to be the future names there, but even if you put Markelle Fultz still in there and playing him with Asar Thompson, that'd just be a really scary sight, and something I think that would be really, really awesome. And again, the Magic have the 11th pick in this draft, and I've actually got them taking a player who I think will help with their shooting. Again, a little bit of a spoiler, but a little bit of a hint to the next video. But yeah, I think who I have them taking a pick 11 should help out with their shooting anyway. So it's just a thing where you're not going to worry about that with Asar Thompson. Look, his shooting's not going to be great, but he's going to make up for it in so many other different aspects, and he's just going to be another really awesome building piece for this already great young core that the Orlando Magic are rocking with. So again, as I said, with the 6th overall pick, I do have the Magic selecting Asar Thompson. Now, with the 7th overall pick, we have the Indiana Pacers, and this is another team who has an exceptional young core, and I think they're almost filling out nearly every position with a really young player, and I think we're up to that small forward position now, and I've actually got them selecting one of the best small forwards in this draft class in Cameron Whitemore, who I think could be a really nice help and player to bring in to this Indiana Pacers team. It's being said that Cameron Whitemore has an extremely good mid-range, a very, very capable three-point shooter, a pretty good defender as well that can switch from 1 through 3. A really underrated scorer as well. When I've talked about Cameron Whitemore in the past, I've talked about him being a really good shooter, whether it's the catch and shoot or from the mid-range, whatever it might be. But one thing I don't think touched on as much as I should have, how underrated of a scorer Cam Whitemore can be, and I think underrated defender at times as well. Again, might need to somewhat work on it if he wants it to translate to the NBA, but from what we've seen, this guy is a very, very capable defender. I've seen some people actually compare him to a bit of like a Justice Winslow, but with a jump shot. And you have to think about it, if Justice Winslow is one of those players that if he actually had a jump shot, he'd low-key be one of the best players in the NBA. Like, it's just the issue with Justice Winslow's game is he can do everything so good, like defend and play make, but he's just got no jump shot or scoring sensibility, and that's why he struggled so much in his career, is because he can do everything, but he's only going to put like 5 points, 6 points really per night out on that court. But you're looking at a Cam Whitemore dude here who's got the similar tools as what Justice Winslow does, but he's actually got an exceptionally good jump shot from the mid-range and 3-point range, and also shown he can be a scorer as well. So you kind of combine Justice Winslow's defense and I think just ability to guard 1 through 3, and then you guard it with a scorer in the NBA, and you're looking at a really nice player. Now, the only thing that he probably doesn't have from Justice Winslow, though, is it's being said that he has not great playmaking skills. He's pretty weak when it does come to passing and ball movement, which is something he'll definitely need to, I think, figure out. But if you get drafted in the Indiana Pacers and you've got Tyrese Halliburton on your team, geez, you don't really need to have much playmaking there, and that is an absolute fact, because you've already got that guy there who's going to be running this entire offense. And the way I see it is you're going to have Tyrese Halliburton having Benedict Mathurin as his shooting guard and Cam Whitemore as his small forward. Like, that trio right there, I don't believe there's anyone under 6'6". Like, I think Halliburton is 6'7", 6'6" maybe. I think Mathurin is like 6'7". You got Whitemore is 6'7" now as well. And they're all athletic guys who can all switch 1 through 3. So that's going to be an absolute big problem on the, I think, defensive end. It's going to really affect a lot of teams because they're just going to be a menace to society on the defensive end of the ball. So it's definitely going to be a really good thing. And I think, this is the move for the Indiana Pacers. Cam Whitemore just really, really adds to their team. As I said, he's a good defender, but it's also just being said that one of the reasons he's such a good defender is because he's consistently high energy all the time, and he even is really good at getting his own boards and just helping out on the rebounding end. And that's something you need on this Pacers team, because Miles Turner, about one of the only things he can't do is he's a very, very below average rebounder for a center. Like, he only averages, I think, 7 or 8 rebounds a night, which is not good really for a guy that averages 30 to 35 minutes. So, and how good he is, he does need help on the rebounding sometimes. So if you bring in a dude like Cam Whitemore who can do that and box out and has the ability to get boards over those taller opponents, then that's a really, really good match for this team. And I think, look, you need a power forward. Will they draft the power forward later on? Maybe, maybe not. You can go on a free agency and maybe bring in a power forward, but this team is really, really set, and the young core is just an absolutely awesome thing, and I'm really excited to see this team. And I think Whitemore just fits into what the Pacers are about, which is a high defensive team that likes to space the ball now. So, yeah, kind of a match made in heaven for the Indiana Pacers, and that's why I've got them taking Cam Whitemore with the 7th overall pick. Now, with the 8th overall pick, we have a team who yeah, has definitely missed on some drafts. A team who I always want to succeed, but just doesn't really, and it's really confusing, really annoying, and I think they really need to nail this pick, and this is the Washington Wizards, of course. They desperately need a point guard more than anything that they've really needed in the last 10 or so years. Like, it is such an issue where you've constantly got players like Kyle Kuzma and Bradley Beal trying to set up this offense because they've just got no point guard there to distribute the ball, and it has become an issue for so long. And look, there's not really an exceptional point guard on the board right now, but I think there is a guy who would be at this pick 8 range or so, who I think would be really, really awesome for this Washington Wizards team, and that actually just happens to be Anthony Black, who I think makes a lot of sense if you bring him in, as he's a dude that is around 6'7", listed as a bit of a point forward who is actually being compared to Josh Giddey, which is a really awesome comparison. We know Josh Giddey is one of the best playmakers in the game, does absolutely freakish stuff on the court, and I don't think that Anthony Black's playmaking is just quite at what Josh Giddey's was when Giddey was playing for the Adelaide 36ers in the NBL. But when I look at Anthony Black, he makes up for it in other things, as he's a really solid shooter who has a pretty awesome mid-range. Again, his three-point shot is not exactly there, but he's definitely developing on it. And what I really like about it is he's actually being said that he's a pass-first player who the Wizards desperately need. Like, they've got shot creators all around him. Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, and I think Kristaps Porzingis. Wouldn't it be nice to have a dude like Anthony Black just come in and play make really, really well, be a pass-first guy, and also a dude who can eventually develop his three-point range? And when you've got Bradley Beal or Kyle Kuzma cooking it up, then you've got a dude like, I think, Anthony Black standing on that perimeter where he will hopefully be able to hit. What's awesome about Anthony Black is he also, I think, will be able to help out with the rebounding that Kristaps Porzingis doesn't necessarily have sometimes. We know Kristaps is a guy that likes to venture out to the three-point line quite a bit, and when he shoots these threes, if they don't go in, there's never really anyone else there to get the boards, especially when Kristaps is playing that 5. You kind of rely on Kyle Kuzma to go do his thing, and Kyle Kuzma's not the greatest rebounder, if I'm going to be honest. I know his numbers do look good, but that's just because, again, Kristaps shoots so many threes, so they have to have a dude getting those rebounds. So I think you bring in a dude like Anthony Black, who's a taller point guard, who's going to be able to go in and help through that. Again, he's got a pretty good vision, though. Even though I said he's not as good as what Josh Giddey is, that's not necessarily saying he doesn't have a good vision. Again, as I said, he's a pass-first guy who's got a pretty good vision, pretty good around the rim as well, and has low-key sneaky quickness, it's being said. And again, he's got a beautiful jump shot. He hasn't been able to hit the 3-ball, but he's actually got a really, really nice and underrated mid-range as well. So I just wonder, look, he's not the most athletic guy out there, but he's kind of that Josh Giddey prototype now, that we're seeing that a lot of these players are really coming out of Australia. Like, you look at Dyson Daniels and Josh Giddey, both out of Australia, and even LaMelo Ball, who played in Australia. Anthony Black isn't from Australia, so I'm not sure if that's anything against him. Obviously, it's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Don't attack me in the comments. I'm Australian myself. I just like to amp up the country. But you know what, Anthony Black, I like this move for the Wizards. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he honestly fills in a lot of the things that they don't have, and they desperately need defense, rebounding, and playmaking, I think. And you're going to bring in the playmaking and the rebounding with Anthony Black. You're going to bring in a quick dude as well who's going to be a pass-first guy. Will he be there on the defensive end of the ball? Maybe. It's not, I think, officially going to be confirmed if he will be. I mean, when we look at that Josh Giddey comparison, Josh Giddey's either a really good defender or you look at him and you're like, yeah, he's pretty slow and unathletic. I think Anthony Black is definitely got that unathletic part of him, but he's definitely not slow. He's, I think, much quicker than Giddey. So on the defensive end of the ball, it's going to be an interesting thing, but I think he will help out in so many awesome and underrated ways with this Washington Wizards team. And he will definitely be a better pick, I believe, than a bunch of the players they've selected in previous years. And I think that's going to be a lot of comfort to know. And I think if you're Bradley Beal, you look at this and you go from having Delon Wright as your point guard, a guy who's like not a good passer at all, to a guy in Anthony Black who, look, he might not be the best passer in his first season. He might start off slow, but hey, maybe there's a chance if you tell him all you got to do is play make and get some boards. Maybe there's a chance he goes out and does exactly that. I doubt he's going to be trying to score over Beal, Porzingis, Kuzma, whoever it might be. He's just going to come in, I think, play make, be the pass-first point guard we know he can definitely be. And yeah, I think this is a really awesome and interesting prospect that I think Wizards fans are going to very, very like, especially if they decide to draft him here. Now, with the 9th overall pick, we have the Utah Jazz, another team who I believe needs a point guard. And again, it so happens that there is a point guard around this kind of mark who I actually like quite a bit. Some people have him as a shooting guard, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where his part of his career will be. I know he's definitely a guy who can just do a bit of both, and that's actually Nick Smith. He's being said that he's a combo guard mainly, and I kind of like him for this team because we know the Jazz desperately need to, I think, draft some guards in this draft. They've really got Colin Sexton there, and that's kind of about it. Colin Sexton's awesome, but I think we know with Sexton's future, he's probably going to be a three-point shooter, off the bench. His three-point shooting is low-key underrated, I think, but also just a really nice scorer off that bench. I wonder what they're going to do with Jordan Clarkson, because I think Sexton would be a lot better of a player if Clarkson wasn't on this team, and Clarkson has a lot of trade value, so I'm not sure what's going to be going on there. But at the end of the day, both those players are pretty much bench players. Clarkson started, but I think his best spot in the NBA is off the bench. And if you bring in a dude like Nick Smith, that kind of allows that to actually happen, as he is a 6'4", again, point guard slash shooting guard who has a 6'9" wingspan. And that's just super scary. Like, imagine putting this dude at point guard and him having a 6'9" wingspan. Like, he's going to be a really, really good defender. I've even seen some people actually compare him to a bit of a Jaden Ivey, where Jaden Ivey is a dude who's like 6'4", can guard the point guard, can guard the shooting guard. Pretty decent playmaker, but can just really be a very awesome defender. Extremely good wingspan. And that's kind of just what Nick Smith has. It's being said that Nick Smith, being a really, really good defender, does also have a really nice three-point jump shot and has an exceptionally good, deep bag in that could compare to the NBA very well, which is a really awesome thing, I think, for this Jazz team. It's being said that he has springy legs and really, really good bounce and can definitely play above the rim. And he's got a 6'9" wingspan, which helps him play above his size, where he can actually go ahead and potentially guard the small forward as well. It's being said that he's a really, really good defender and can be a very nice big-time talent in the future. Again, his playmaking, it might be a little bit of an unknown. It's going to be really interesting to see if this will translate, I think, to the NBA. But honestly, I think it'd be a good experiment to give it a go, especially considering this dude's going to be a 6'4" guy with a 6'9" wingspan. He's going to be an exceptionally good defender, which I think the Jazz lost a lot of at the trade deadline. They definitely lost a lot of their defense, and especially losing Mike Conley. Conley is an extremely underrated, I think, defender at that point guard position. So bringing in a dude like Nick Smith will definitely help bring that defense, I think, and restore that quite well. I do think the potential will be there on the playmaking end, and I hope that he can convert to being a good playmaker. And look, if it doesn't work out, there's no reason why the Utah Jazz can say, look, he might not be the future starting point guard, but he might be the future starting shooting guard. Like, the fact that he's such an elite defender with a 6'9" wingspan, who's extremely athletic, is really awesome, because if the point guard situation doesn't work, well, you just play him at shooting guard. The dude's a combo guard. He can do both. And that's what's really awesome about this selection that I think will have Utah Jazz fans excited, especially if they do decide to select him. And look, in the first season, if you don't find your starting shooting guard or whatever, I still think Jordan Clarkson could start, and they'd be a really awesome duo. And who knows, maybe if they might even see that or disagree with me, that Colin Sexton is a future backup guard. Maybe they think Colin Sexton's a future starting guard, and this was just a year to get him back from injury. Maybe they have plans to rock him at the 1, and maybe have a dude like Nick Smith Jr. go to the 2. He would make up for a lot of what Colin Sexton doesn't do, which is defense. So, yeah, I think it'd be a really awesome duo, and why not? You could definitely see how that goes, and I think Nick Smith Jr. is a really solid player to have at this 9th overall pick, because his playmaking, we don't know yet if it will be what we think it could be and translate to the NBA. But at the end of the day, you're looking at a really good athletic defender who could quite potentially be a nice scorer as well in the NBA, who can guard 1 through 3. Like, this is a 6'4" dude with a 6'9" wingspan. Like, I've heard Jaden Ivey comparisons, but what about Bruce Brown? Bruce Brown's a dude who is also, I believe, 6'4" with like a 6'9" wingspan. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA, playing on a team who is in the finals now. Like, that's just crazy, and is going to be getting, I think, some pretty big offers in the free agency, especially from a team potentially like the Cleveland Cavaliers and the team he plays for now in the Denver Nuggets. So, a lot of really awesome things going on there, and I think Nick Smith Jr. could maybe be a similar type of guy. And look, Bruce Brown's even played backup point guard this year. So yeah, maybe that's the real comparison over Jaden Ivey. So again, I think this is a really good pick, and I think it makes a lot of sense that the Utah Jazz should, of course, be selecting Nick Smith Jr. with the 9th overall pick. Now, moving on to the Dallas Mavericks with the 10th overall pick. I think Dallas are in a situation where they don't necessarily need to be going out and obviously trying to draft that next star. They definitely don't need to do that, especially if they can retain Kyrie Irving, which I'm not sure if they're going to. What that's going to be like, we don't know, but you've got Luka Doncic at that 1. You should have cap space anyway, especially if you trade some of those bad contracts and whatnot, to go out and maybe even try and sign another star, even if Kyrie doesn't come back. And I think you've got some exceptional role players there in like Josh Green, but I don't think they necessarily have their future starting power forward. I think Maxi Kleber's cool there. Christian Wood plays some minutes there, not a whole lot. And I've heard rumors he might not be back in free agency. But if I'm looking at this Dallas Mavericks team, I'm just wondering, look, can you go out and draft a power forward here who's going to help out the team quite a bit? And so happens that the best player I think available right now is a power forward in Taylor Hendricks, who I think really fits this team. You're looking at a 6'9" guy who has really good size, really good length. He is a really nice jumper and a very, very good 3-ball as well. He's got that 6'9" strong frame where he's really, really good athletically. He's got a strong bounce and really scores effortlessly above the rim. It's being said that he's a great dunker and is always a threat to get a really nice offensive board, which it doesn't seem like the Mavericks have had in a minute. And it's also being said that he's really good defensively and can guard the 3 to the 5. A comparison that I love that this guy's being compared to, and I think this makes a lot of sense, is actually Jeremy Grant. And I think, yeah, you're looking at a younger Jeremy Grant, a dude who can be a really nice 3-point shooter that can definitely help out on the rebounding, but most importantly, be a really good defender, which I think this Dallas Mavericks team needs. I think they're one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and I think that's obviously a fact. And then you look at it like that. If you're going to have Luka being the ball distributor and even Kyrie, right, you're going to need some shooters around these guys. And they've already got Josh Green, who's low-key a really underrated 3-point shooter and underrated role player, who I think will obviously be their future starting small forward. He's an absolute gun, Josh Green is. So I think he'd be really awesome to have. He complements Kyrie and Luka so greatly because he doesn't need the ball to score. Can be a really nice off-ball guy. And I think if you bring in Taylor Hendricks, I'm looking at a very similar thing to Josh Green, just much better defensively. Again, you're looking at a guy who doesn't need the ball to score. You've got an exceptionally good 3-point shooter who I think, can, of course, defend to an extremely high level. And I think if Dallas play their cards right, they can improve their defense so much since last season. Again, they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. If you consistently start Josh Green, he builds up that confidence. He's going to be a star role player in this league where I think, again, week by week, he's going to keep improving that defense. Taylor Hendricks, look, he might not start straight away, but I see this dude playing 20 to 30 minutes per game, whether that's starting or off the bench. Switching from 3 to 5. He can play the 3, he can play the 4, he can play the 5. I think he's going to be very, very useful for this Dallas Mavericks team. And if they want to go small ball, which they've always liked to do, having him at center would be crazy. A 6'9" dude who can get an offensive rebound and just a board in general that has the ability to shoot threes. Yeah, crazy stuff right there. Again, I think in free agency with a couple of moves here and there, they might need to find their center and whatever, which could, of course, happen. I think there'll be a lot of things that go into that. I'm not too sure who their future guy will be. I don't think it's Christian Wood. I think they're probably just going to let him walk. He didn't do what I think they wanted him to, and I think they're going to be looking for a center who's going to be good defensively and can get a board here and there as well that can complement Luka on the pick and roll. You know, a guy like Clint Capella could be a somewhat of a cheap get, whether that's through free agency or trade. I think he's actually contracted, so maybe trade. But yeah, he would be a really awesome dude to maybe bring up on this team. There's a lot of things this Dallas Mavericks squad can do that I'm going to be really, really interested to see if they will, of course, do so. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys agree with everything I've said with these picks 6 through 10? Of course, I would definitely like to know. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to my IRL/vlog channel, my podcast. All of them will be linked in the description down below. My gaming channel as well. Go check them out. Most importantly, subscribe to this channel, leave a like, comment your thoughts and opinions. I'd very much like to hear them. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.